My VP bullied me into approving his expense reports for 2 years. Then I actually read one and uncovered $62,000 in fraud he couldn't explain. I was staring at a gas station receipt for commercial diesel fuel when I realized the man who'd been threatening my job every Friday for 2 years drove an electric car. He hadn't just been stealing. He'd been stupid about it. And I was done being the person who looked the other way. My name is Adrian, and I want to be upfront about something before I walk you through what happened. I am not a dramatic person. I am the opposite of dramatic. I am the person who brings a labeled Tupperware to the office potluck and color codes his filing system and finds genuine satisfaction in a reconciled spreadsheet. I process expense reports for a mid-sized logistics company, have done for 4 years, and in that time I have flagged maybe a dozen genuinely suspicious submissions, always through proper channels, always with documentation, always quietly. I do not make scenes. I do not make enemies. Marcus Holt made me make an exception. Let me tell you about Marcus. VP of Sales. 11 years with the company, corner office on the 4th floor, the kind of man who wore his seniority the way other people wear expensive cologne. You could smell it before he walked into the room. He was in his mid-50s, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, with the particular brand of confidence that comes not from competence but from having gone unchallenged for so long that he'd forgotten challenge was a possibility. He was also, and I cannot stress this enough, deeply unpleasant to work with if you weren't above him on the org chart. The first time I met Marcus Holt was 3 weeks into my job. He appeared at my desk without introduction, dropped a folder of expense reports on my keyboard, literally on my keyboard, not beside it, and said, "These need to be processed by end of day. Just approve them." I looked up at him. He was already walking away. "I'll need to review them first," I called after him. Standard procedure. Every new employee is told this in orientation. He stopped, turned around, looked at me the way you look at a parking meter that's just issued you a ticket. "Kid," he said, I was 29 at the time, "I've been submitting these reports since before you were in high school. Just approve them." And then he left. I reviewed them anyway, found nothing irregular that first time, and approved them. But I noted the interaction. I noted it the way you note a small crack in a ceiling, not alarming yet, but worth watching. Over the following weeks, the pattern established itself with the mechanical regularity of a standing meeting nobody wanted. Every Friday morning, Marcus Holt would submit his weekly expense report. Every Friday morning, it included a gas card receipt from a Shell station on Route 9 for exactly $300. Not $297.43. Not $312.18. Exactly $300. Every single week. The first time I flagged it for review, standard review, nothing accusatory, just following procedure, he called my desk within 20 minutes. "What's the problem?" he said. Not hello. Not is there an issue. Just, "What's the problem?" delivered in the tone of someone who has decided in advance that there isn't one. "I'm just completing the standard itemization review on your fuel receipts," I told him. "Company policy requires." "I know what company policy requires," he said. "I helped write company policy. Are you approving it or not?" "I'll have it processed today." "Good." And he hung up. I approved it. Because I was new, and he was a VP, and the receipt looked fine on the surface, a gas station receipt, a plausible amount, a company card. The numbers made sense. A sales VP doing client visits across a multi-county territory could realistically spend $300 a week on fuel. Could. The second time I asked a clarifying question, he escalated to my manager. My manager, who was a decent man but not a fighter, came to my desk that afternoon looking mildly pained and said, "Adrian, just, let's try to keep Marcus happy, okay? He's been here forever. He brings in a lot of revenue." I was following procedure. "I know, and you're right, but," he shrugged. The shrug of a man who has chosen his battles, and this is not one of them. After that, I stopped asking questions. Not because I believed Marcus was clean, but because I understood the terrain. He was protected. He was senior. He was friendly with the CEO. They played golf. They went to each other's kids' weddings. They had the kind of workplace friendship that functions as a force field against accountability. So for 2 years, every Friday morning, Marcus Holt submitted his $300 Shell receipt. And every Friday morning, I processed it without comment. I told myself it was fine. I told myself someone above me had surely already audited this. I told myself it wasn't my problem. And then one Tuesday in October I was clearing a backlog of submissions and I accidentally, truly, completely accidentally, opened Marcus's most recent receipt instead of the one I meant to click on. And instead of just glancing at the total and hitting approve like I trained myself to do, I actually looked at the itemized line. Commercial diesel fuel, 87.4 gallons, $300. I sat there for a moment. Commercial diesel fuel. I read it again. Commercial diesel Fuel. I leaned back in my chair and I thought about Marcus Holt's car. Because I had seen Marcus Holt's car. Every employee at our company had seen Marcus Holt's car because he parked it in the reserved spot directly outside the front entrance, and he talked about it with the enthusiasm of a man who had recently discovered a new personality trait. It was a Tesla Model 3, matte black, dual motor. He'd announced the purchase in a company-wide email, which I remember because I remember thinking it was a remarkably bold use of the company email list. A Tesla Model 3, which runs on electricity, which does not, under any circumstances, require diesel fuel, which does not, in fact, have a fuel tank of any kind. I put my coffee mug down on my desk very carefully. My hands were completely steady. Everything felt very clear and very quiet, the way a room goes quiet when you finally understand what you've been looking at. I pulled up the previous week's receipt. Commercial diesel fuel, 84.1 gallons. The week before that, commercial diesel fuel, 91.3 gallons. I went back 6 months, pulling every receipt Marcus had submitted, opening each one fully for the first time and reading the itemized line. Every single one. Commercial diesel. Every Friday for at least 6 months, and almost certainly longer. I only had 6 months of scanned receipts readily accessible in the system. The older records had been archived. I was going to need the archived records. But first, I opened a new spreadsheet. I started a column labeled date, a column labeled gallons, a column labeled amount, and I started entering data with the calm, focused energy of a man who has just decided, very quietly, that something is going to be done about this. Here's where I need to pause, because I want you to understand the position I was in. I had been processing Marcus Holt's fraudulent expense reports, without complaint, for 2 years. Not because I was complicit, not because I knew what he was doing, but because I had been bullied into compliance by a man who outranked me, protected by the company's internal culture, and enabled by a system that rewarded not asking questions. If I took this to my manager would tell the CEO. The CEO played golf with Marcus. Marcus would know I was investigating him within 48 hours, and whatever paper trail existed would disappear, and I would likely be managing my own exit paperwork within the month. I could not go up. I had to go around. But before I did anything, I needed more than a spreadsheet of diesel receipts purchased by a man who drove an electric vehicle. I needed to know where exactly $300 worth of commercial diesel fuel was going every Friday, if not into Marcus Holt's car. I thought about it for the rest of that day, and the answer came to me the next morning in the shower with the particular clarity of ideas that arrive when you're not trying to force them. We had a corporate account with the Shell station on Route 9. Corporate account meant purchase records. And corporate account, because of a security upgrade the company had implemented 18 months ago after a card skimming incident, meant access to the gas station security camera footage for any transaction made on our card. I had never used this access. I barely remembered it existed. It was in the account documentation somewhere, in the fine print of an agreement I'd filed and forgotten. I found the documentation in 20 minutes. I submitted the camera access request through the online portal, citing a routine audit which was technically true. The system was automated. No one at the company saw my request. The footage came back within 2 hours. I put on my headphones. I opened the files. And I watched. Okay, this is the part where the floor dropped out. Because I want you to picture what I expected to see. Maybe Marcus lending the card to someone. Maybe a friend of his filling up a personal truck. Maybe some low-level scheme involving one vehicle. That is not what I saw. The camera was positioned above the commercial diesel pumps at the back of the station, the high-volume pumps, the ones semi-trucks use. And on Friday at 7:14 a.m., a truck pulled up to those pumps. Not a pickup truck, not an SUV, an 18-wheeler, a massive commercial freight truck with a logo on the side I didn't recognize, a company called Holt Brothers Transport. A man I didn't recognize got out of the cab and began fueling with Marcus's corporate card. I paused the footage. I wrote down the company name. I ran a search. Holt Brothers Transport, LLC, registered in the state. 2 directors listed in the public filing. Marcus Holt. And a name I recognized from Marcus's emergency contact form in HR, Gerald Holt. His brother. I sat at my desk for a solid minute without moving. My coffee went cold. My computer screen blurred slightly, not from emotion but from the kind of intense focus that forgets to blink. Then I went back to the footage. There wasn't one truck. I watched 4 consecutive Fridays of footage. Every week, between 7 o'clock and 7:30 a.m., a Holt Brothers Transport truck pulled up and fueled using Marcus's corporate card. The amounts were consistent with filling a large commercial diesel tank, 80-90 gallons per visit. Marcus wasn't submitting one fraudulent receipt. He had constructed a standing operation. information. A scheduled, weekly fuel subsidy for his brother's trucking company, charged entirely to our corporate account, approved without review by an accounts processor who'd been systematically intimidated into not looking too closely by me. I pulled the archived expense records going back 2 years, which was as far as our retention policy covered. I built a complete dataset. Every receipt, every Friday, every gallon, over 2 years, $31,200. And then I found the second card. Marcus had 2 company gas cards registered under his account. I'd only ever seen him submit receipts from one. I found the second one buried in the account documentation. It had been issued 18 months ago. I pulled its transaction history. It had been used on Thursdays. Also at the Shell on Route 9. Also for commercial diesel. The total across both cards, across 24 months, $62,400. $62,400. Stolen from the company. 1 tank at a time, every week, for 2 years. While I sat 10 feet from my manager's office and hit approve. I closed my spreadsheet. I sat very still. I thought about the way Marcus Holt had dropped that folder of expense reports on my keyboard 3 weeks into my job and walked away without introducing himself. I thought about every Friday phone call. Every, just approve them. Every pointed silence from my manager that told me to leave it alone. Then I opened a new email. I did not address it to my manager. I did not address it to the CEO. I addressed it to the company's corporate legal team, a team that operated independently of the executive structure, with a direct line to outside counsel and, where necessary, law enforcement. I had their contact information because it was publicly listed in the employee handbook, in the section about ethics violations. The section I had never had reason to use before. I spent 4 hours writing that email. It was the most careful piece of writing I have ever done in my professional life. I attached the full spreadsheet. I attached every scanned receipt going back 2 years. I attached the gas station security footage, all 4 weeks of it, clearly showing a Holt Brothers transport truck, not a Tesla Model 3, fueling on a corporate card. I attached the business registration documents showing Marcus and Gerald Holt as co-directors. I attached the account documentation showing both gas cards. I did not editorialize. I did not write a single sentence that was not a verifiable fact. I let the math do what it was designed to do. I hit send at 4:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. And then I went home and I didn't sleep much. The corporate legal team acknowledged my email at 8:12 the next morning with a reply that said only, "Thank you. Do not discuss this with anyone. We will be in touch." I did not discuss it with anyone. I went to work on Thursday. I sat at my desk. I processed expense reports. Marcus submitted his usual batch and I approved them with the automatic routine I developed over 2 years, and I felt absolutely nothing except the deep, steady hum of something set in motion that could not be stopped. He stopped by my desk once that Thursday afternoon. Not about the expense reports. He needed a printout of his quarterly travel totals for a presentation. "Sure," I said. "Give me 5 minutes." "Make it 2, he said, and walked back toward the elevator. I printed the document. I brought it to his office. He didn't look up when I set it on his desk. "Thanks," he said, with the warmth of a man thanking an elevator for arriving. "No problem," I said, and I walked back to my desk. I thought about telling you that I felt something profound in that moment, some cinematic satisfaction, some cold-blooded awareness that everything was about to change. But honestly, what I felt was tired. 2 years of a particular kind of tired that you accumulate gradually without noticing until suddenly the weight of it is very obvious. I went back to my spreadsheet and I finished out the day. Friday arrived. I want to describe Friday for you, because you need to understand that nothing about it looked unusual until it did. The morning was completely ordinary. People arrived, coffee was made, the ambient noise of an open-plan office settled in. Marcus came in at 9:30 as usual, stopped to talk to someone near the elevator as usual, went up to his 4th-floor office as usual. He submitted his expense report at 10:15. I processed it at 10:22. Exactly $300. Commercial diesel fuel. Receipt attached. Business as usual. I was in the middle of a different audit at 1:47 p.m. when I heard the elevator doors open. I looked up because the sound was wrong. Not the soft pneumatic exhale of normal elevator use. It opened and then held open, and there was the particular shuffling sound of a group of people entering a space at once with purpose. 2 men in suits I didn't recognize. A woman with a badge clipped to her jacket. 2 uniformed police officers. doors. And behind them, our head of HR, looking like a person who has been told something they cannot unbelieve. They walked directly past the front desk. The receptionist, Donna, started to say something and then didn't, and they went to the elevator. They went up. The office had gone very quiet. Not completely quiet, but the kind of quiet that spreads through a room when people stop pretending to work. 11 minutes later, the elevator opened again. Marcus Holt walked out of it with his hands behind his back. He was not in handcuffs yet. That happened in the lobby, I found out later, just before they put him in the car. But he walked out of that elevator in a suit that had cost more than my monthly rent, and his face was doing something I had never seen it do in 2 years of interaction. It was completely still, not calm, still. The face of a man who has arrived at the end of something and is processing the dimensions of it. He walked across the floor toward the lobby. He did not look at anyone. He looked at me. I don't know if it was deliberate. I don't know if he knew yet, at that exact moment, who had sent the email. I don't know if it was just the randomness of where his eyes landed during a walk he was being compelled to take. But he looked at me, for maybe 2 seconds, and I looked back. I did not look away. He looked away first, and then he was through the lobby doors, and then he was gone. I found out the full scope of it over the following weeks, through the legal team's updates and through the publicly available arrest records, because Marcus Holt's arrest was not a quiet internal matter. Felony embezzlement of $62,400 from a corporate account is a charge that gets documented. The corporate card fraud, confirmed at $62,400 over 24 months. Both cards, both trucks. Gerald Holt had been using the company accounts to subsidize the entire fuel operation of Holt Brothers Transport, which ran 11 commercial trucks on regular routes. 11 trucks, fueled, in significant part, on our company's dime. The IRS got involved because once the fraud investigation opened, it triggered a review of Holt Brothers Transport's business filings. What they found, there was a separate problem that I was not involved in and don't have full details on, but the public record indicates the company's assets were seized pending investigation. Gerald Holt was arrested 3 days after Marcus. Marcus was terminated, obviously. His employment record, his 11 years, his corner office, his golf relationship with the CEO, none of it survived contact with $62,000 in documented embezzlement. My manager came to my desk the Monday after the arrest. He sat down in the chair across from me, which he almost never did, and he said, "I heard it was you." "It was a standard audit review," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "I should have let you do your job," he said finally. "I'm sorry." I appreciated that. It was a harder thing to say than it probably sounds. "It's done now," I said. And I meant it. I want to be clear about one more thing before I close this out, because I've seen the comments on posts like this and I know what some people are going to say. Yes, I processed his reports for 2 years without flagging them. Yes, I could have pushed harder. Yes, I was aware, on some level, that something felt wrong. And yes, I made the choice, repeatedly, over a long period of time, to approve things I wasn't comfortable with because I was afraid of the consequences of not doing so. That's not something I'm proud of. It's also not something I can go back and change. What I can tell you is that the moment I actually looked, the moment I stopped reflexively approving and actually read one itemized line on one receipt, the whole thing unraveled in less than 72 hours. Because the fraud was not sophisticated. It was brazen. It was built entirely on the assumption that no one would look. That I would keep not looking. That the combination of his seniority, his protection, and my compliance would hold indefinitely. He was wrong about the last part. He had bullied the wrong accounts processor into the wrong habit of looking away. And on a Tuesday in October, when I opened his receipt by accident and read the words commercial diesel fuel on a charge submitted by a man who drove an electric vehicle, the habit broke. Marcus Holt is currently awaiting trial. The charge is felony embezzlement. His attorney has entered a not guilty plea, which I find interesting given that I have 2 years of gas station security footage and a complete financial spreadsheet, but I am not a lawyer and I wish the legal system well with that. His Tesla is still in the reserved parking spot outside the building. Someone will deal with it eventually, I assume. Every Friday morning now, I process the sales department's expense reports with genuine thoroughness. I read every line. I check every receipt. I cross-reference every claim. Nobody has tried to stop me. So here's what I want to leave you with, and I'm genuinely asking. Marcus Holt spent 2 years stealing $62,000 from the company, systematically terrorizing the one-person position to catch him into staying quiet, and he did it so sloppily that a single accidental click on the wrong file ended his entire career, his brother's business, and his freedom. Was he just greedy? Or was he so used to people like me looking away that he genuinely stopped believing consequences were something that could happen to him? Because I think about that a lot. And I think the answer is the most dangerous thing a person in power can ever become: comfortable.
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, Then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.